Walters is back for another season as the official bar of the Nats Chat podcast. Walters is the best spot to go before and after home games, located at the southeast corner of Capitol and N Streets, right across the street from the ballpark.
Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.
Rosario edges away to a good-sized lead. The kick, he's running the pitch, swing, and a fly ball hit well to left center field. Back goes Kepler to the warning track. It's going, and it is gone! Goodbye! Bang! Zoom goes Keibert Ruiz with his second home run of the season. He has one from each side of the plate. And the Nationals on the board here in the bottom of the second inning with one out. It's the Nationals 2 and the Phillies nothing.
Sims deals to the backstop on the fly. The ball wedges into the netting, and so a run will score. A wild pitch, scoring Stott, and it is 4-2. My, oh my. The pitch. Swinging a fly ball deep right field. Cruz going back to the wall, and there it goes. It lands on the Nationals bullpen mound, and Brandon Marsh has a 3-run homer, and the Phillies hit double digits. They lead it 10-3.
And welcome to Nats Chat, along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman, who is at Nationals Park. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. We are 2 games into the Nats 2025 regular season, and the Nats bullpen has been a big problem in each game. Thursday, a 7-3 10-inning loss to the Philadelphia Phillies at Nationals Park. 5 Nats relievers combined to allow 7 runs, 6 earned in 4 innings. Saturday, an 11-6 loss to the Phillies at Nationals Park. 4 Nats relievers combined to allow 9 runs in 3 and a third innings, giving up 7 hits, 6 walks, a wild pitch, and a balk. You can find us on X at Nats_chat. You can find us on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. You can email the show, natschatpodcast@gmail.com, including if you would like to give a shout out to a listener of this podcast. You want to send a hello, a congratulations, a happy birthday, whatever. Email Tim Shovers, the man who runs the pod, and he'll hook you up. Again, that email address, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. You know, Mark, we with Thursday's loss at least could split the blame between the bullpen and the Nats offense, which really wasn't that good on opening day. The Nats offense on Saturday, certainly not perfect, but I would say good enough to win. The Nats starting pitcher, Jake Irvin, certainly not perfect, but good enough to win. 2 runs in 5 innings. This loss on Saturday, pretty clearly a bullpen loss.
Yeah, on Thursday, it was a tight, close game all the way through, and then it fell apart in the 10th inning and didn't give him much of a chance. This time, it's a tight game for 5 innings, and then the bullpen gate swings open. And before the lineup even has a chance to do anything else after that, it was already out of hand. And while they did score some runs in those final innings to make it a little bit more interesting, they really were too far behind at that point for it to have any tangible effect. So this one goes squarely on the shoulders of a bullpen that, as we discussed prior to opening day and then after opening day, and now again here after game 2, is really a cause for concern. The group as a whole, and specifically some of these guys, the middle relievers, I guess you can call them, who would come in say, the 6th and 7th innings. And some of these are guys with track records in the big leagues, and they're not performing up to what those track records say they're supposed to be. Colin Poche and Lucas Sims in particular have been front and center in both of these games. Now, ideally, you don't want them to be the ones that are deciding games for you. You should have better options in the bullpen for later in games. But in this case, they went to who they had early on and never even got the chance to consider using their better relievers at the end.
No, they did not. And, as bad as the bullpen was on opening day, the bullpen was worse in this game. I mean, the final line, again, 9 runs, 3 and a third innings. And again, nobody ends up having what you could call a good outing. Like the Nats, 5 relievers on opening day, 4 relievers on Saturday. The Nats essentially are 0 for 9 in terms of a reliever having just a good outing. We haven't had that yet over 2 games. So the specifics here are rather gory. Hide the women and children. Colin Poche officially allowed 3 runs in a third of an inning. He hit a Phillies 5-run 6, and that's where the game turned. A 5-run Phillies 6. Faced 4 batters, but got just 1 out. He issued back-to-back 1-out, 5-pitch walks, then gave up a single by Brandon Marsh to right field on a 1-2 pitch to load the bases. Then came Lucas Sims into the game. He and the Phillies' 5-run six officially allowed 2 runs without recording an out. He faced 3 batters, did not record an out. Sims issued a 1-out, bases-loaded walk of the Phillies' number 9 batter, Edmundo Sosa, despite having had Sosa down in the count at 1.12. Sims then issued a run-scoring wild pitch. Sims then gave up a 1-out, 3-run homer by an ex-Nat, Kyle Schwarber, to right center field on a 1-2 pitch. And Sims then gave up a 1-out, first-pitch single by Alec Boehm up the middle. Orlando Revolta was the next man up. He officially allowed 4 runs in 2 innings. He retired each of the first 2 batters he faced for the final 2 outs of that Phillies 5-run six, but he in the top of the 7th issued back-to-back 1-out walks and then gave up a 1-out first-pitch 3-run homer by Brandon Marsh to right field for a 10-3 Phillies lead. And Eduardo Salazar had the closest thing that you could say to a good outing. He faced 7 batters. He got 5 outs. There's a lot that stands out from all of this, but one of the big ones, and it's an obvious thing, the walks. These guys were walking the ballpark, and these guys paid for those walks.
So here's the deal. In those 2 innings, the 6th and the 7th, they gave up a combined 8 runs on only 4 hits. Okay? It's the walks, absolutely. And then the fact that following the walks, they give up home runs. 2 killer 3-run homers, a direct result of guys already on base because of the walks. And take the 2 games combined now by the bullpen. I mean, this is scary to consider. They've pitched a combined 8 innings, their bullpen. They've now given up 16 runs, walked 12, and given up 5 home runs. I mean, walks and homers, that's about as bad as it gets, that combination. And unfortunately, we have seen this from this pitching staff over the last few years. It's not like a slow drip, giving up a single here, a double there, a single here. It's walks, and then it is towering, no doubt, home runs that change a game completely. In both these guys' cases, now Sims does unfortunately have something of a track record of doing both those things, walks and homers. He strikes out a lot of guys, but he's kind of a 3 true outcome pitcher. When he gets in trouble, it's usually walks and it's home runs. Poche, not quite as much as that. He's supposed to be a strike thrower. For him to have so much trouble finding the strike zone, that's a little more confounding. Either way, you can't continue like that from 2 veterans who are supposed to be semi-reliable for you. And I hate to say this 2 games in because you don't want to overreact to anything. But if I'm Davey Martinez and the situation arises on Sunday, I've got to be looking at some other arms in those situations. You've already now given each of these guys 2 chances, and they've failed in each of those chances. And you're going to lose a lack of faith in the manager when that happens.
And Davey's using a lot of relievers, not so much because the starting pitching has been bad, but because the relievers are ineffective. And so he in game 1 uses 5 relievers, in part because it was a 10-inning game, okay, but in game 2, he uses 4 relievers. And, thank goodness that Ats had the off day on Friday, because otherwise, who knows what kind of shape this bullpen would be in for game 3 of this series. One of the things that stands out to me about Lucas Sims from Saturday is how he multiple times had guys in put-away spots and did not put them away. And something that I brought up on the podcast off the Nats signing Sims in February was, yes, he has been a high strikeout guy in his career, but he is a strikeout pitcher in decline. Sims, over the 2019 through 2021 regular season, strikeouts per 9 innings of 12.99. That's outstanding. But Sims, over the last 3 regular seasons, 2022 through 2024, strikeouts per 9 innings of 9.69. That's not terrible, but that's a big drop-off from where he had been at. And you go through the specifics of what happened on Saturday. Sims had the Phillies, again, number 9 batter, Edmundo Sosa, down 1-2, doesn't put him away. Has Kyle Schwarber down 1-2, doesn't put him away. Your Lucas Sims, you are known for strikeouts. Those are spots have to get strikeouts. He did not get them there. And instead, you had a worst case scenario play out where Edmundo Sosa ends up getting walked with the bases loaded. And Kyle Schwarber gave us a Schwarbomb for a 3-run homer.
So Sims, in explaining what was going on, he said he felt like he was getting too cute. And here's what I think he means by that. He only threw 12 pitches in the outing, but he threw 5 different types of pitches out of his 12. Four-seam fastball 6 times, sweeper 3 times. Those are supposed to be his 2 primary pitches. But he also threw a slider, a changeup, and a cutter. And I haven't gone back to see which ones he threw when, but I wonder if that's part of this and what you're talking about, not putting away hitters. And he's saying to himself, hey, you've got him on the ropes. Do what you do best. His breaking ball is supposed to be his big out pitch, and he only threw 3 of them out of the 12. I wonder if that, more than anything, is what was bothering him from this one. Know who you are as a pitcher, know your strengths, and then go out there and trust them to do that. And it sounds to me, reading between the lines, like he didn't do that and was pretty upset at himself for not doing that. The other issue that came out of all this is, you mentioned how many of the guys they had to use. Well, that included Orlando Ribalta throwing 49 pitches over parts of 3 innings. And you're saying, how in the world did that happen on day 2 of the season? This is not a traditional long reliever. This is not a starter being converted into a reliever. 49 pitches is a huge total for a traditional reliever at this stage of the season. So what happened? Well, you've already burned up Sims and Poche. You had Brad Lord warming up earlier with Poche. Davey said before the game, I really want to get Lord into this game. The idea being like, hey, he's a rookie, but we want to throw him in there. Don't let him sit around. Let's see how he can do. He ends up not using him. And because he warmed up twice without being put into the game, especially with a rookie, they said, we're not going to throw him now the rest of the way. We're not going to do that to him from a physical standpoint, because now you got to warm up a 3rd time before coming into the game. That can't happen. You cannot let that kind of thing happen. The other thing that's been noticeable here in these first 2 games is the other guy who has not pitched yet for them, and that is Jorge Lopez, who was supposed to be one of their, trusted late inning relievers, setup men. We haven't seen him. He warmed up on Thursday, didn't pitch, and then he never even warmed up in this one. Turns out, according to Davey Martinez, he was sick and was getting IV fluids before the game, and so they didn't want to take a chance of putting him into this one. I mean, that's a bad spot to be in game 2, where now, because of that, one guy being sick and unavailable, the other guy warming up twice and now no longer being available, and you have to ask somebody else to throw 49 pitches on game 2. There's a domino effect of those things, and you hope it doesn't catch up with them already.
Do we know why Brad Lord warmed up twice but did not pitch? Like, there must be some reason for that. Do we know what that is?
Part of it was you had Jake Irvin, and we'll get to his outing here. He had a really long 4th inning, and the fear was, we may have to pull him before that inning is over, the first time he warmed up. And then again in the 5th, it's both him and Poche warming up. The thought probably being that Irvin may not finish that inning. He ends up with a 4-pitch inning, gets out of it, and now you go to the 6th, and they decided at that point to go to Poche, and so he's warmed up twice. Now, I get that, okay, but I'm also thinking to myself, maybe with a veteran, that's not a big deal, but a kid who has never pitched in the big leagues before, you can't do that. If you get him up to warm up, certainly, maybe the first time, but certainly the second time, you have to commit to using him no matter what. It ends up being a waste. And you can say, well, he's still available for Sunday, but I don't know. He's not used to this. This is a starter throughout his minor league career. He's not used to this. We don't know how his arm recovers the day after warming up twice. There's a term for this in baseball when you warm a guy up and don't use him. I'm not going to use it because it's not a family-friendly term. It's not very complimentary, and it's not the kind of thing you want to be doing to any pitcher, let alone a rookie who has yet to make his major league debut.
That's right. Save that smut for other podcasts. We on this podcast take the high road always. Well, I'll tell you this. Sunday is the day of the Lord, so Brad Lord better be available for Game 3 of this series on Sunday. Otherwise, we're all in trouble. It's funny with this bullpen, right? Because, like we've said, we had concerns. We're not the only ones. I mean, I think a lot of people listening to this had concerns about the bullpen going into the season. You wonder if this might be one of those years in which the bullpen is really bad, like a 2017, like a 2019. And I remember during those regular seasons, it got to a point to where you stopped criticizing the manager because you just said to yourself, the bullpen is wretched. These guys aren't very good. And so to get caught up in the minutia of bullpen management, you almost felt silly. I remember with Dusty Baker in 2017, and I was not one of those people who was shy about criticizing Dusty, okay? But I was not critical of him for his bullpen management that regular season because it's what is he supposed to do? The bullpen was horrible. And the same thing in 2019 with Davey. And, I really hope that that's not the case this season with this bullpen. We're 2 games in. We all understand you don't overreact over 2 games. But, on paper, you're not overwhelmed by this bullpen. And the way for this to work has always been, well, it's a bunch of guys who could be good, but also could not be good, and just hopeful that you get a bunch of results in the positive as opposed to in the negative. And that's always kind of a dangerous thing, right? And that is kind of the nature of relievers in general. I get that. But especially with these guys, I mean, Colin Poche, minor league contract. Like, what exactly are you expecting from a guy like that? Lucas Sims wasn't signed by the Nats until multiple weeks into February. Like, what does that tell you about where he's at in his career? So we'll see. It is so up in the air, though, right now. I was thinking about this before the game on Saturday. When it comes to the A bullpen and the B bullpen, I'm open to anything. I think anything is possible this year. Like, whatever ends up being the A bullpen, assuming there is one at some point, I think you should be open-minded to anyone on the major league roster and to a lot of guys in the minors right now in terms of potentially comprising whatever that A bullpen ends up being, assuming that we have an A bullpen with this Nats team.
Yeah, I really hope that the domino effect of what we've seen here the first two games is that Davey Martinez does not feel obligated to use the same guys in the high leverage spots and isn't going to wait a long time and is willing to put some less experienced pitchers in those spots. Now, in the sixth inning as that's falling apart, I'm saying to myself, well, why not Ribalta here? Now, he did go to Ribalta in the seventh, and that didn't go well either. So you never know. You can't just say that the promising, hard-throwing young guy is going to be a better option, but you do have to explore those at least. What I will say, a little ray of hope here would be you want to believe that Finnegan, he's got the track record. He may not be the world's greatest closer, but he's a reliable, for the most part, late inning reliever. You want to believe that Jose Ferrer is legit. I know his opening day did not go well, but there's a lot to like with those two. Derek Law is ideally going to be back here within 2 weeks. He may have made a big difference in either or both of these games if he's available. So that hurt them. And then Lopez, I gave the reason why he didn't pitch. He was sick, but he does have some kind of big league track record pitching in late innings. So let's see once he gets out there. So it may be a couple weeks till we get the full group of it, but Finnegan, Ferrer, Lopez, and Law should be a competent A bullpen. I'm not going to call them a great A bullpen, but that's four guys that you should feel somewhat good about. And then the rest of the group, you're not so sure. Let's hope that that ultimately develops as their top four and that those guys are what they're kind of supposed to be.
Tim Shover's here to tell you about a special offer that Babbel has for Nats Chat podcast listeners. I took Spanish in high school, but forgot all of it the minute I got to college. But the past few years, while covering Nationals press conferences, I've noticed that the bilingual Davey Martinez has been getting more and more questions in Spanish and answering them accordingly.
No, tenemos un roster, muchos de los jóvenes de nosotros, pero tenemos veteranos también que nos va a ayudar. Esperamos un momentito para poner todo junto, pero yo creo que este año tenemos un roster buen fuerte.
If you're like me and you want to know what is Davey saying when answering these questions in Spanish, because after all, he is talking about the Washington Nationals, then one option is turning to Babbel, where language no longer has to be the barrier. With over 16 million subscriptions sold, Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by a 20-day money-back guarantee. Let's get more of you talking in a new language. Babbel is gifting our listeners 60% off subscriptions at babbel.com/natschat. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/natschat. That's spelled BABBEL.com/natschat. Babbel.com/natschat. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Hey, Cam Newton here, and this episode is brought to you by Roe. Valentine's Day is right around the corner, but that real, good, passionate romance, that strong, hot, uncontrollable romance should be a year-round pleasure. They say the best gifts are experiences. So take your girl on a ride of her life with Roe's ED treatment. Rose Sparks is a 2-in-1 prescription treatment for stronger, harder erections. They hit that bloodstream faster because they dissolve right up under your tongue. Getting hard faster means more buns. After they dissolve, they typically take about 15 minutes. Rose Sparks stays in your system for 36 hours, so you can go back to back to back to back to back, back to back to back to back to back. Roe connects guys with a medical provider 100% online. so there's no awkward conversation with in-person providers. If prescribed, new sexual health patients get $15 off Sparks on a recurring plan. Connect with the provider at ro.co/fourth to find out if Ro Sparks is right for you. That's ro.co/fourth for $15 off your first order. If approved, treatment ships directly to your door. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, and/or manufacturing review. For full safety information, go to ro.co/safety info.
Colon cancer is considered one of the most preventable but least prevented cancers. That's why screening for colon cancer is critical. Sometimes, people want to avoid the drama of screening with the colonoscopy. You know, the prep, the downtime, all of it. Thankfully, there's the Cologuard test, a non-invasive screening option for adults 45 and older at average risk that is delivered right to your door. Early detection is critical. When caught early, colon cancer is survivable in 90% of the cases. With the Cologuard test, the process is simple. The test is delivered to your door, you send the sample back to the lab, and get results within 2 weeks. The best part? The Cologuard test is covered by most insurance plans. The Cologuard test is intended to screen adults 45 and older at average risk for colorectal cancer. Ask your healthcare provider about screening with Cologuard. Cologuard is available by prescription only. Visit Cologuard.com to learn more.
Jake Irvin is into the windup. Here comes the first pitch of the afternoon. Swung on and hit in the air to deep right. Cruz going back, way back over his head. They'll play the carom off the wall. Schwarber on his way to second. The throw by Cruz. They're going to get him. He is out at second base. And Dylan Cruz played the carom off the wall onto the warning track and fired a strike.
It's a shame because the Phillies have this very imposing lineup, and yet the Nats have gotten overall good starting pitching over the first 2 games of this series. Mackenzie Gore was brilliant in Game 1, and Jake Irvin was solid in Game 2. 2 runs in 5 innings. He gave up 7 hits, which were a home run, 2 doubles, and 4 singles. Issued 2 walks, only had 2 strikeouts. He threw 83 pitches, 55 strikes versus just 28 balls. So look, he didn't set the world on fire, but 2 runs in 5 innings in this day and age is not bad. And maybe most notable, the velocity was back to where you want it to be off having been diminished late in the exhibition season. That might be the single most important item from this game, because the last thing you wanted to start doing was start worrying about Jake Irvin and where is he at from a health standpoint, but it looks like he is in fact just fine.
So the game started off very well for him in that standpoint. He was at 95 in the first inning. That did tail off as the game went on, and he was more like 91, 92 in the 5th inning. But he was overall encouraged about it, and he really attributed whatever drop there was over the course of the game to a mechanical thing of not using his legs and not being quite in alignment with the plate as best. So he feels like that's a very minor tweak that he can get back together and not have that kind of concern. So if there was a concern about his health after the last spring training start, which I think all of us were kind of like, well, maybe there's something going on here, and didn't get to pitch in the exhibition game against the Orioles because that rained out. So how do we really know with him? I think he did put those kind of fears to rest. Now it's more about mechanics and everything else. But I mean, he had to kind of grind his way through this one. There was not a 1-2-3 inning, but he got through it. He had the 1 rough inning in the 4th, giving up a home run, but then got out of that without it getting worse. And remember, when he was at his worst last year, he would let innings get out of control on him. So he didn't do that. That was important. And then, as I said, the strong finish, the 4-pitch 5th inning to finish his day on a good note. I think all of that was important. So not a full-fledged Jake Irvin start that he wants or that everyone wants to see from him, but good enough, certainly, to give them a chance to win.
And the Nats offense in this 11-6 loss to the Phillies on Saturday certainly was good enough. There were nits to pick for sure, but ultimately 6 runs, 12 hits, 4 walks. That should be good enough to win. Now, the nits to pick would be the Nats going just 1 for 10 with runners in scoring position. The Nats now, over the first 2 games of this series, a mere 3 for 21 with runners in scoring position. And the Nats did strike out 15 times, but the Nats hit for power in this game. Saturday, a warm day in the nation's capital. Balls were flying out of Nationals Park. The 12 hits for the Nats were made up of 3 home runs, 2 doubles, and 7 singles. So the offense, for the most part, was there. And for the most part, you felt good about. And how about Keibert Ruiz? Off homering on opening day, Keibert in this game on Saturday as the Nats starting catcher and number 7 batter for a second time in as many games this regular season. 2 for 3 with a 2-run homer and a double. Ruiz in the Nats 2-run second, a 1-out 2-run homer to left field for a 2-0 Nats lead. The homer going a projected 414 feet per Statcast. And Ruiz in the bottom of the 6th, a 1-out double down the right field line. Awesome to see him off to such a good start here.
It's such an encouraging development. We talked about it the other day, and this is just a continuation of that, how much he needs psychologically to get his season going off to a good start. And he's done exactly that. I mean, opening day, he bats left-handed and hits a ball into the right field bullpen. Game 2, he bats right-handed and hits a ball over the left field bullpen. You can't draw it up any better than that to do it from both sides of the plate and not cheapies in either case. The double was really well struck. So that was great. And if he had a little bit of speed, it probably could have been a triple because it went all the way into the right field corner. I can only imagine how good he is feeling himself. And if there's any nice little positives to take out of these first 2 games, I think, obviously what Mackenzie Gore did on the mound opening day, but right there with that is what Keibert Ruiz has done these first 2 games. You hope that this is a sign of some really good things to come and that this is that breakthrough season that everybody has been hoping for.
And while every player wants to get off to a good start to the regular season, you would think for Keibert Ruiz, it is especially important that he gets off to a good start, given how rough his last few seasons have been. Also homering for the Nats on Saturday, Amed Rosario. He was the Nats starting second baseman and number 5 batter. Rosario got the start at second base over Luis Garcia Jr. The Nats faced a Phillies lefty starting pitcher and former Nats farmhand Jesus Luzardo. Now, look, I'll be honest. I am not a big fan of the Davey Martinez thing of not playing Luis Garcia Jr. or at least not starting him against left-handed pitching. As we have discussed previously, how do you get better at something if you're never allowed to do that something? And Davey, the last few years, especially last season with Garcia having a breakout season, still, for the most part, stuck to the mantra of when the Nats face an opposing left-handed starter, Garcia doesn't start. I was not a big fan of that. But I'll say this about Davey, and we have noted this. He does have a knack for knowing who to play, when to play them, play the matchups. And sure enough, this paid off on Saturday. Give credit where credit's due. Rosario, again, is the Nats' number 5 batter, 3 for 5 with a solo homer and a couple of infield singles. Rosario in a Nats 2-run second, leadoff infield single on a grounder to Phillies third baseman Alec Boehm on a 1-2 pitch. Rosario in a Nats 1-run 6th, a leadoff homer to left field on a 1-2 pitch to cut the Nats deficit to 7-3. And Rosario in a Nats 2-run 8th, a leadoff infield single up the middle. So Rosario impactful in each of 3 innings in which the Nats scored, and Rosario homering in this game.
Now, the funny part of it is, so he's in there because facing the lefty, and he had personally good numbers against Luzardo in his career, while Garcia had some pretty bad numbers against him. The thing is, the home run came after Luzardo was out of the game, and it came off a righty, and I believe the single later on as well off the righty. So yeah, it all worked out, but maybe not necessarily because of the matchup. But beyond that, I think there is an understanding, as we've talked about, that they want everybody on the roster to have an impact this year. So while, yes, you have your 9 regulars in the lineup, he wants to make sure the guys on the bench do get a chance to play somewhat regularly and keep them sharp. And so this was a good day to do that with Rosario. I expect Luis Garcia to be back in there for the series finale. A little surprised he hit 5th, but again, the production showed that maybe it was worth it. And this is a guy who he essentially replaces Ildemaro Vargas. Vargas, the better defender, no doubt about it, in the infield. But Rosario does provide more of a bat than Ildemaro Vargas ever did. And so if he can do that for you, you sacrifice a little bit defense from your utility infielder and like the offense that you can get from a guy who also plays second base and third base, this could end up being a productive signing for them and an upgrade from what they've had the last couple of years.
Rosario is a guy who, for Cleveland, a few years ago, had a really good year. Rosario for the Guardians in the 2022 regular season, 4.2 wins above replacement per Baseball Reference. He at one time was viewed as like this really promising young player. Hasn't exactly worked out that way. So, we'll see what he can provide here. I still think with Garcia, he's not going to get better against left-handed pitching if he's not allowed to face left-handed pitching. So that is still a thing. But again, it worked out with Rosario in this game. And then the Nats' third and final homer in this game came from Nathaniel Lowe. He is the Nats starting first baseman and number 6 batter, 2 for 5 with a 2-run homer and an RBI single. So a 3 RBI day for Lowe. He and the Nats' 2-run 8th had a 2-run homer to right center field on a 1-2 pitch to cut the Nats deficit to 11-5. And Lowe in the Nats' 1-run 9th, a 2-out full count opposite field RBI single off ex-Nat Joe Ross through the left side of the infield to cut the Nats deficit to 11-6 despite having been down in the count at 1.12. Lowe, obviously not like the first guy you think of when you think about the potential for the Nats to hit more homers this season, but he does have power and in theory can give you, like 18, 20 homers, and, that's not nothing.
Yeah, they would love to get 20-plus homers out of him, and they think that is doable, and he thinks that is doable as well. And, 2 games, not a whole lot to go off of, but did have one of the few hits in the game Thursday, and then a very nice, good power stroke there on the home run, and then another single as well. So pretty good stuff from him. And so far, not a lot to base off of, but what we've seen so far, the defense at first base has been as advertised. This is a Gold Glove winner in the American League, and he makes a big difference for them at first base. I mean, the defense, there have been a couple of plays so far that haven't been great, but more than not, I think they've been pretty good. Paul DeYoung was good at third base. Dylan Cruz had the play of the day to start the game, throwing out Schwarber, trying to stretch a single into a double. So if they can keep these games close, get some better relief pitching and force them to actually put the ball in play, I think there is a feeling that the defense can actually help them win more games than cost them games like they've done maybe the last few years.
Do and also salute James Wood. He on Saturday as the Nats starting left fielder and number 3 batter went 2 for 5 with a double and an infield single. Also had a stolen base, but did strike out 3 times. And you mentioned Dylan Cruz. And speaking of striking out, so look, Cruz, to his credit, had that stellar defensive play. Top of the first, threw out Kyle Schwarber in his attempt to stretch a leadoff first pitch single into a double. Cruz fielded the ball off the right field wall, then made a really good one-hop throw to shortstop C.J. Abrams at second base where Schwarber was tagged out. But Cruz, who was as the Nats' number 2 batter in this game, so back up the lineup, starting right fielder, 0 for 5 with 5 strikeouts. I mentioned this. The Nats in this game striking out 15 times, a third of the strikeouts coming from Dylan Cruz. A rough day for him.
And there were some bad swings, and there were a lot of takes as well, a lot of called strikes against him. Has not really looked all that comfortable at the plate so far. Again, 2 games, don't want to read too much into it all. He did bat second against the lefty. I would imagine with Aaron Nola, the right-hander, starting on Sunday, we're going to see him back down towards the bottom of the lineup. I don't know if it'll be 8th, but I don't think it's going to be up high there, especially after the 0 for 5 day that he had on Saturday. I don't think anybody's really that worried about him in the bigger picture, but just acknowledge that he is still learning at the big league level. He is still quite inexperienced, and he's got some work to do. He is far from being a finished product at this point. And while he may have actually had more baseball experience and high-level baseball experience than James Wood at the time of his call-up, very early on, James Wood has looked more big league ready than Dylan Cruz has in the very early going of his career.
Yeah, and while there is that tendency to group the two together, the truth is last season, James Wood at the major league level was good. Dylan Cruz at the major league level was not good. Now, Cruz's sample size was a lot smaller than Wood's. And like you said, I don't think anyone is in panic mode with Dylan Cruz. But, if you look at what each guy did last season, there's a big difference. James Wood was a very good hitter last season, was excellent at drawing walks. And, we talked about the lack of homers, but even that started to pick up as the season went on. Cruz's numbers ended up being pretty ugly in terms of his 30-plus game run at the major league level. So that is something to keep in mind. And like we said, rough game offensively, certainly on Saturday.
Hey, Nats Chat. Tim Shover's here to tell you about the latest offer that Peak Tea has for our listeners. They sent me a few boxes, and the first one that I've been trying is the fermented Pu'er black tea. It helps with digestion and metabolism, but most importantly for me, it has a lot of caffeine. If you're someone like me who's very opinionated with their caffeine, I recommend checking this out. As you can imagine, editing this podcast, a lot of late nights, a lot of early mornings when they're on the West Coast. So if I'm drinking some caffeine, you know it matters to me. Want to tell you now about the offer for our listeners. Go to peaklife.com/Nats. That's PIQUE life.com/Nats for 20% off. Again, peaklife.com/Nats. That's PIQUE life.com/Nats.
Hey, Cam Newton here, and this episode is brought to you by Roe. Valentine's Day is right around the corner, but that real, good, passionate romance, that strong, hot, uncontrollable romance should be a year-round pleasure. They say the best gifts are experiences. So take your girl on a ride of her life with Roe's ED treatment. Rose Sparks is a 2-in-1 prescription treatment for stronger, harder erections. They hit that bloodstream faster because they dissolve right up under your tongue. Getting hard faster means more buns. After they dissolve, they typically take about 15 minutes. Rose Sparks stays in your system for 36 hours, so you can go back to back to back to back to back, back to back to back to back to back. Roe connects guys with a medical provider 100% online. So there's no awkward conversation with in-person providers. If prescribed, new sexual health patients get $15 off Sparks on a recurring plan. Connect with the provider at ro.co/fourth to find out if Rose Sparks is right for you. That's ro.co/fourth for $15 off your first order. If approved, treatment ships directly to your door. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, and or manufacturing review. For full safety information, go to ro.co/safety info.
Finally, the solution to your weight management woes has arrived. Henry Meds offers access to compounded GLP-1 medications from the comfort of your home. The healthcare providers at Henry Meds make access to weight management treatments fast, easy, and affordable.
After starting this journey on compounded semaglutide from Henry Meds, I'm down 85 pounds. This journey has been life-changing.
Go to henrymeds.com/Pandora to start your weight management journey today. That's henrymeds.com/Pandora. Results may vary. Not all patients are eligible. Compounded medications are not FDA approved. Consult a healthcare provider to determine if treatment is right for you.
And Joe Ross, the right-hander coming set. He kicks and he fires, swinging a ground ball left side. It's going to go through into left field, a base hit. Bell around third being waved home as Marsh is up with it. And Bell will score standing as Marsh gets it into second base.
How about Josh Bell? Bell has been the Nats starting DH and cleanup batter each of the first two games of this regular season. He on Thursday went 0 for 4. He on Saturday went 0 for 4 with a walk. We talked about this. How firm of a commitment is there to Josh Bell as an everyday guy, as the number one DH and, as the regular cleanup batter? I'm all for giving a guy a shot. We know Bell is extremely streaky. We remember a few years back, he got off to that horrible start and then he really got good. So I'm not saying you got to pull the plug now, but I do hope that the leash is not a mile long here because, Dylan Cruz is one thing. Josh Bell, who has been a declining player in recent years, to me anyway, is another thing.
Yeah, I get that. And I think deep down they know that. But I think they also, as you alluded to there, they know how streaky he is. And he is a guy who can look awful for a few weeks at a time. And then as soon as it starts to click, he can look outstanding for a month and a half. Together. They've seen that here in the past. I know it's several years ago, but he still had some of those kind of streaks in the years since when he's bounced around the league. So you got to give him some time to get the timing down and to find that groove. But I would think that the leash isn't as long as it used to be a few years back, that they wouldn't just guarantee it. And he's hit cleanup, as you said. Ideally, you don't have to do that, especially if he's struggling. The question is going to be, who else do you go there with there? Lowe is certainly a cleanup candidate, not a prototypical cleanup hitter, but, middle of the order bat. You could probably do that there. What I would be interested to see is if he keeps it up, would they move Keibert Ruiz up in the lineup? And the whole idea coming into the year was that Ruiz has been asked a lot in the last few years to hit third, fourth, fifth for this team. And that's not really who he is or who he's supposed to be. And that maybe they were putting too much on his shoulders. And so you come into this year and you finally say, boy, they have enough depth now that they can bat him seventh that could be good for him. Well, it has been good for him, except if he ends up being one of the few really productive hitters, especially power hitters, are you going to be tempted to put him back up in the middle of the lineup? Again, 2 games, I don't want to jump ahead too much, but that would be something that would be interesting if it continues on these paths.
Well, there's such irony to what you just said, because the Nats have had this like black hole in the cleanup spot in recent years, and part of that has been Keibert Ruiz, and now that he could be the solution to this latest example of the black hole, and Josh Bell is just so funny. It's crazy how baseball can work out. Again, like you said, it's 2 games, so I don't think you have to say, Josh Bell, you can't back cleanup ever again, but so far the results have not been great. Maybe the most important item from Saturday, the regular season debut of the Nats' new Blueprint City Connect uniforms. Can I say, and I might be in the minority on this, I really like these City Connect unis. I think they're better than the Cherry Blossom uniforms. And I know a lot of people love those Cherry Blossom unis. So again, I'm probably in the minority here. I think these new Blueprint City Connect uniforms look really sharp. Are you a fan of the new City Connect unis?
I am, and you're not alone in that opinion that you expressed about thinking that these are better than the old ones. I've heard that from several people here in the last week or so since they debuted. I remember thinking when the Cherry Blossoms first came out, you see the debut of them, you see the hype video, you see like them on the mannequins and photos of it. And I said, yeah, I'm not so sure about this. And then once you saw them on the field, the full uniform, everybody wearing them together, you thought, oh, okay, that's nice. And obviously fans loved them. So when these came out a week ago, I said, they look all right. Probably not as good as the previous ones, but hold off. Let me see again. Once I see the whole uniform, the whole set on the field, all of them together, I'll reserve judgment. And I got to see that finally on this day, and it really popped. It was sharp. My hot take on this is I think there are elements of both that I would love to see combined into one. In a perfect world. I think the cherry blossom motif and theme was really cool and unique, and that pink cherry blossom color that nobody else in sports really has was a nice little extra touch. A lot of teams wear blue, so it's not that big a deal, although I like the shade of blue they picked here because it's not exactly the same as other teams. What I didn't like about the old ones was the WSH on the front of the jersey. People from DC don't refer to it that way. They don't abbreviate it like that. And just the lettering itself was very blocky and big. I like the logos they have on these new ones. The W with the capital dome outline underneath it. The DC, I've always loved a DC interlocking logo. I don't love the font on it, but I do like the idea of the DC being the prominent logo on the jersey. If you could take, let's say, this denim blue, we'll call it color they've got now, and make that with the cherry blossom pink, and then use the current logos with it, I think you'd have the best of both worlds and a really sharp uniform. They can't do that, obviously. But for all the fear of, they're never going to be able to top that last one, and it's going to be a nightmare and nobody's going to like it, the early returns are very positive. And again, once you see it out there on the field, everybody wearing it together, the whole thing with not just the uniform, but the cap, the pants, even the pullovers and things that the other people in the dugout were wearing, it looked sharp, I think.
And I think the blue is what makes it. That particular selection of blue, I think is perfect. I think it looks so nice. I think one of the big issues with the Cherry Blossom City Connect unis was the gray. It's just, I don't know, it's a drab color. It's kind of a dull, boring color. This blue pops. It gets your attention. I just think they nailed it with this. Now, the Nats themselves don't design the City Connect uniforms. Is that correct?
No, that's not true. They do have a designer who is kind of contracted by them. They then work in conjunction with Nike on this. So what I was told is they kind of had some initial designs. Nike gave them some thoughts of their own. And some of the first looks were not all that popular within the organization. And there were a lot of changes made to it. I think one of them may be that they went from a much darker shade of blue to this lighter one, which absolutely would be a win if that's the way that it went. So it's kind of in conjunction, but they do have a designer, and it's like the same person who designed their other jerseys, who submits at least the ideas behind it. And then maybe the Nike people take those ideas and implement it into what they're looking for.
Well, whoever did it did a really good job. So bravo to the Nats for these latest installments of City Connect uniforms. You tell us what you think about the unis or anything else. We'd rather talk about the uniforms and the bullpen at this point. Hit us up on X at Nats_chat. You can find us on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. If you would like to sponsor the show, we'd love to have you on board. Hit up Tim Shovers. Our email address is natschatpodcast@gmail.com. Nats Chat is on the radio Sunday morning from 9 to 10 on ESPN Richmond, which is 106.1 FM in the Richmond, Virginia area, and Sunday morning 9 to 10 on Priority Sports Radio 94.1 in the Virginia Beach area. All Nats highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.
Ruiz brings it home, and a long drive down the left field line, deep toward the corner. Kepler chasing back. Will it stay fair? It will, and it's gone. Right down the line, a home run for Amed Rosario in his Nationals debut.
Finally, the solution to your weight management woes has arrived. Henry Meds offers access to compounded GLP-1 medications from the comfort of your home. The healthcare providers at Henry Meds make access to weight management treatments fast, easy, and affordable.
After starting this journey on compounded semaglutide from Henry Meds, I'm down 85 pounds. This journey has been life-changing.
Go to henrymeds.com/Pandora to start your weight management journey today. That's henrymeds.com/Pandora. Results may vary. Not all patients are eligible. Compounded medications are not FDA approved. Consult a healthcare provider to determine if treatment is right for you.